Virginia Matsuyama Masuoka. I attended Sonoma Grammar School with Mark Andrews here in, I guess, 1937 to 1945. We graduated from grammar school here. Of course, they don't call it grammar school anymore, I guess. It's elementary or something. But yeah, I loved the school very much. Mr. Presswood, our principal, could scare the daylights out of you, but he was a good principal. I thought the world of all the teachers. I can still name them from first grade to 8th grade.
Could you do that? Could you do that for us now?
Okay. Miss Young was our first grade. Miss Bates and Miss Brendel, who became Mrs. Craigbaum. And then 4th grade was Miss Cayer. 5th grade was Miss Cooper. 6th grade was Miss Solari. 7th grade was Mrs. Rogers. And 8th grade was Miss Breslin. And yeah, 5th grade will always just being in this room means a lot to me. In 1942, 41, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, my life kind of changed, the family life changed. Executive Order 9066 came out that we were to evacuate. The Japanese would be leaving the West Coast. And thank you, my hero. I was in school on a Friday, and then on Monday I was in camp. That was in, I believe it was in May of 42. And no one really knew I was leaving. I didn't know I was leaving until on a Sunday morning, that Sunday morning. My mom, I woke up and there was a nice, my dress was pressed and everything. I thought, well, gee, it's too early for Sunday school. And my mom said, get up, she had breakfast ready. And then she took me aside into the living room and told me that I was going to be going to see my sister Anna, who was in the Camp Fran Assembly Center at that time. She was already there. And she said, you're going to go see your sister, and she'll be there to greet you. And I said, well, who's all going? She said, well, you're going to go to school, go to camp with your two brothers, Alvin and his, my other brother was nicknamed Boyd. And so I said, what about you, Mom? And she said, no, Mama's going to stay here. My mother was German, my father Japanese. And so she said, you'll be, I'm going to stay here because this is always the farm otherwise. So my mom had first married to a Swiss Italian and had a son by George, who was the most wonderful farmer and wonderful human being and the greatest of brothers. And he had gone to Sonoma High School. He quit high school when he was 16 so he could help my mother and father raise the 7 of us. My mother divorced her first husband, I think in around 1902, no, 6, 7, 8, around 1908. But anyway, my mother said that you catch the Greyhound bus, and so my brother George took us to town, and we got on the bus, and I remember sitting next to my one brother, boy, he was 20, I believe. He was taken out of Santa Rosa Junior College to go to camp. And as we came down Broadway, I saw my mom standing in the driveway and waved to her. I said, okay, we got to camp finally. It was a long ride, and it was at San Bruno. It was called the Pamperan Relocation Center, Assembly Center. And my sister was there. And I thought, well, this is a voice that my brother Boyd told me, come on over and to the administration office. And he said, you wait here, and I gotta go in the office and take these papers in. So I was waiting, and this huge, tall MP came up. God, he was so tall. And he said, little girl, what are you doing here? I said, well, I don't know, but my brother's in the office with the papers. And fortunately, at that time, my brother came out, and he handed the MP the papers. And he said, he read them, he looked at me, and he says, well, I sure wouldn't want I got a sister your age, and I sure in hell wouldn't want her in a place like this. And I thought, oh, what kind of place is this? So then I saw my sister peeking around the corner, and I was happy to see her, and I ran over to her. She said, come on, you're just in time for lunch. And I walked through the door and walked into the camp, and I had never seen so many Japanese in all my life. You know, it was a huge experience. And then my sister said, don't stare. And I said, why? They're staring at me. But it was, we were there for, as soon as I went to camp, though, on Monday morning, my mother came to Mr. Presswood and asked him if he would help her compose a letter stating that what could a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, my brother Alan, do to a country that they've only been taught to love and respect. And so he did, and that letter went to 6th Army headquarters in San Francisco and on to Washington, D.C. And then a few weeks later, it came back that my brother and I could come back home to my mother. And that was such a beautiful day when she came down with that letter. She was allowed to visit us on weekends. And so one day, Mr. Cutter, Sheriff Cutter, came down, and he said, come on, Virginia and Alvin, I'm going to take you home to your mother. And it was bittersweet, because as I was leaving the camp, I turned around and I could see the barbed wire and everything, but for a minute there I thought maybe I'm safer back here. I didn't know. And then I didn't want to leave my brother and sister, but Sheriff Cutter said, Virginia, your mother's waiting. And that did it. I went up, we got in the car, and it was a very quiet ride home. My brother, well, I was 10 at that time, and my brother 14. And we got this, I was so happy when I got home, because the animals, like the dogs and cats and everything were there. And so my mother said, well, you better get to bed because you got to go to school tomorrow. And I said, oh yeah. Well, when I got up, I asked my mother, do you think that George would drive me up a little early, and then I could sneak into class, and I'd sit there and surprise the kids when they come into the room. We marched up those stairs out there and came into, this was the entrance door, and this was the exit door. And my seat was a little, right where the dog is laying, but back maybe a little bit. I was in the middle row, I remember. And I thought, Well, George said, yeah, I'll drive you up. So he dropped me off in front of the school, and I came up the steps, and it was such a beautiful day. And I sat there, and I thought, oh, I'm going to surprise everybody. Well, the bell rang, and they all lined up outside. I could hear them coming up the stairs. And I thought, oh God, I felt my heart was going to pound right through my chest. And I could hear them get to the top of the stairs. And I panicked. I thought, what if they don't want me here? What if they tell me to go away? And I got up, I ran for the exit door, and I thought, I was crying, and I went, Mama, and I ran, and then I heard, Virginia, Mats, is that you? Miss Cooper, Virginia's back, Mats is back. And I was being covered with hugs and kisses, and I'll never forget. And I, Mark, you were one of them. It just meant so much to me. And I thought, I'm home. And I looked over, and there was Miss Cooper, all like finished. She had this gorgeous blue and white plaid suit on, and she looked so tall, standing there with her beautiful white hair. And she said, Virginia, get to your seat. And I said, oh my God, I'm home. I'm home. And that's, I wanted to come up and have my children see the room where I was, and Miss Cooper's desk was up there. And it was just back to school. It was beautiful. And that's what I want my children to know about. And friends, I don't need a dictionary to define friendship, because I lived with that day. I really truly do. So that was my reason for wanting to come here.
I'm so glad you did. Were you, the rest of the time that you spent here at school, did you feel that other people were worried about you being Japanese during the rest of the war? The war was almost over.
No, in fact, this guy, remember, Miss Cooper tried to explain the day I didn't show up for school. She tried to explain the best she could to the children why Virginia wasn't going to be in school. And Mark, at lunchtime, he went home there all the time for lunch, and he said he ran home, and his mother's working out in her, if you pardon the expression, Mark's victory garden. And he said, hi, Mom, did you know the Matsuyamas are going to blow up? She said, Mark, I think we better go in and have a thought.
Is that what your teacher told you?
No, it was just, we were so close. You just have to remember that this was a small town.
Yeah.
And Virginia and I, and a lot of people that are no longer with us, had grown up together since we were in the first grade or kindergarten, some of us. And
remember, the Yamakawa family was the only
right, and they lived back over on the other side of the school.
Yeah.
And civil defense had gotten along, and of course my dad was a doctor and was important, and we were blacking out, and they had, rumors of attack and supposedly quote unquote ships offshore at Bodega, and that was the thing that I knew Virginia wasn't gonna get it, but because she was nice.
In fact, when we came home back to my brother George, this is kind of complicated because my mother had two sons named George, and I asked her finally when she was 92. years old. Oh, why in the world did you name two boys George? She says, she was 45 when I was born. She said to me, I like the name. I said, okay. And then I found out her brother was named George. Her father was named George. So it was a precious name to her. And she adored her brother. When he went into World War I, she was so afraid that he wouldn't be coming back. She wanted the name another George, but she did. And my brother, the one that we call Boy, he was in camp with me. He wrote to Sheriff Ted Reese, Chief of Police Ted Reese, if I I would like to come back to Sonoma to have permission to come back and help my brother George on the produce farm that we had. And he wrote to, he said, more or less, do you think I'd be a detriment to the community? And Chief of Police Ted Reese wrote back and said, definitely not. He would be. I wish I have the letter that my brother wrote to Sheriff, Chief of Police Ted Reese, but I don't have the one that was the response. But my brother was allowed to come home and help my brother on the farm. And my mother said, only in America, he said, only in America, that she just loved this country. And my brother did, and then one day he came home and after the crops were over, and he said, Mama, I'm going to go down to the Presidio and see if I can join the army. And they told him no, they were taking Japs at that time. So he came home, he was kind of frustrated, and he started packing up, and Mama said, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to go to Utah. And he said, my sister Anna went from San Bruno to Topaz, Utah, camp there. And so he said, I'm going to go to Utah. And she said, what, are you going to go see Anna? He said, no, I'm going to go join the army. And he did. He went to, which he wasn't supposed to go that far from home.
Right.
But he went and he changed, he had, he was going to Santa Rosa Junior College when the war broke out. And while he was in camp, they were having their graduation. This is 1942. 43, huh? No, 42. 42. And he asked permission to leave the camp and graduate with his class. And once again, he was given that permission but he came by him, he went by himself to Santa Rosa, the bus depot, we picked him up, took him in. I remember it so well because it was my birthday that day. And my mother sat on the aisle seat. She wanted to get there. She picked him up, went, got a seat right next to the aisle. So we were sitting there. And I remember her sitting, and one of my brother went by onto the stage. She said, you know what, girlie? I want you to know this is one of the nicest presents you could have for your birthday. And I'm thinking, I'd rather have a bike or a sweet or something. And my brother came, after he got his diploma, he came up to my mom and said, I want to go to the courthouse. He said, why? She said, what are you going to do there? He said, I'm going to change my name to Woman, because my brother Louis, who was already in the army, he was drafted in 41. He trained with the 442 at Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And when his outfit shipped out, they didn't ship my brother. And that was a Japanese outfit. That was Nisei, second generation. And they didn't ship my brother, and he wanted to know why, and they said, we suggest you change your name. And so he wrote to my father, and my father said that, Louis, sometimes you have to do things. I understand. So he changed his name, and he wrote home and told my mother if the others want to, you know, more or less get ahead with all of what's going on, they're gonna probably have to change their name. So 4 of my brothers changed their name, 3 to Walnut and 1 to Charles. And
Or Walnut.
yeah, Walnut. There 3 of them were Walnut, so yeah.
You know why they chose that name?
My mother's maiden name.
As your maiden name.
But my brother Louis took the last name of Charles after his very dear friend. I think it was Charlie Denham. And yeah, it's then well, when my brother boy was allowed to come home and help on the farm, all the areas had block wardens. So they asked my brother to be block warden for our area. It was more rural farm, out a little bit, the city limits. So one night, and I hated it when that siren would go off and everybody had to turn out their lights and everything. And my mother had gone to visit a family on business, and she said, "You stay with Boy." And I said, "Oh, okay." Well, sure enough, the alarm went off, the siren, and my brother said, "Come on, you gotta come with me." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, you're not gonna stay here by yourself." So he got his flashlight and everything, and we were going out to see if everyone had their windows papered and so forth, the cover. And he dropped his flashlight, and somehow it went on. And the fella coming towards us said, "Turn that goddamn light off. Don't you know that the Japs could be coming?" And my brother leaned over and said, "Should I tell him?" But yeah, then we went to, he went into the Army, he got into the Army. And fortunately, all my brothers came home saying that my father, who was the martial arts instructor with the San Francisco police, he was going to go to camp with us. But he was told, "No, go to Colorado and train the military, the police there, and train the military also." He went to different camps while he was back there, and he trained I think it was like Arkansas, Nebraska. And he had it pretty rough there in Colorado at first getting started, but once he got in with the police department and everything went good. I didn't see my father for, let's see, he left in 42, and I saw him again in 1948. He came back to kind of feel his way, to see how everything would be if he were to bring his business back to San Francisco. And it was kind of hard at first because here I was 10 when he left, and I was 16, going on 17 when he came home. And it was kind of distant at first, but then he was a good storyteller, and he talked a lot about what he went through, and I began to realize, you know, we both grew, he grew older and I grew up, you know, and when he was shocked that I had changed quite a bit, but he was happy. And the first thing when he got to stay overnight, I was going out with some of my friends, and he said, we're telling you to be home. And I said, not late, because we have something to do tomorrow. It was Friday night. And no, it was a Saturday night, because it was kind of like date night. And he said, you be careful though. And I said, yeah. He said, what movie are you going to? And I said, oh, it's something with Robert Mitchum. I can't remember the name of it. I said, oh, Papa, he's so good. And he said, yeah, okay. Well, when I came home, there was this big sheet of, the page from the Chronicle, a big picture with Robert Mitchum on the front. Arrested for using. I said, what timing? My father come home. But he had a good laugh over that. Yeah.
So did it work when you went back to San Francisco to work?
My father had a stroke
Oh.
in I think it was October of '49. He was home and he was gonna make the big move back to San Francisco. And his business was doing well. He had found that the Yawara stick could take the place of the policeman's big club. And that was doing well. In fact, he got a letter from New Delhi, India, asking him to come over and demonstrate. But everything took its toll on my dad. Yeah. He was so in hopes, and he told, he stayed at the farm with my mother and brother, and he was always very determined. And one day, he could stand up, but as far as walking, it was a little bit down the road. And one hand was, he kind of paralyzed. But he told my brother George, I want you to put a post in the ground there, and a post about 10 feet down. And he says, then put pipe going around. So he sat in his wheelchair and he was watching the progress. And one day he told my brother, he called it my brother Didi, he said, Didi, watch. And he got up, he pulled himself up and he said, Papa, you gotta be careful. Well, my father took a step and landed in the dirt. It just, it was awful. And George was so upset. And my father was laughing. And he said, see, Didi, Papa's first step. He had all this dirt. But he was very, people have asked me how my father and George got along. And I said, my mother always was very proud of the fact that George just took to Papa. And I guess when George was about 7 years old, my father said, let me take him to the city and stay with me, okay? And my father said, I don't know, because at that time there was no Golden Gate Bridge. To get home from San Francisco where they had a studio, my father had to take the ferry boat to Sausalito and then catch the train and come into Shelbyville, to Weinberg or into Sonoma. And so my father, when he was bringing George home, realized he only had one ticket that went into Sonoma, so he was going to have to get off and instead of Weinberg, he was going to get George a ticket to come into Sonoma, where we were going to meet him. And while my father was getting the ticket, the train started moving, and George said, oh, I got to go find Papa. And he got off the train, and my father got on the train. So here, George, he knew the way home. He was going to walk. Well, my mother was so angry when George walked in without Papa. So Papa said, George, I'm not going to take George to the city for a long time. And my dad's English was not always too great, but I guess I was kind of selfish. I never wanted him to change. I wanted it that way. So,
your sister that stayed in the camp and then went to Utah, how long was she in the camp?
She was in camp for several months, but they were allowed, they received those or applied for a card that would allow them to leave camp and go to Chicago or around. See, the East Coast didn't have any of that, just here on the West Coast. And so she and her husband applied for these cards, and they went to Utah to where he had a cousin, and then they went back to camp, I think, and then they went back to Chicago, where she got a secretarial job, I believe it was. And Johnny worked at, her husband had a florist shop. Then in 1945, they came back to Alameda, where they had two, just the one flower shop at that time. And they welcomed Johnny back. In fact, one gentleman offered to loan him the money to get started again in the florist business. Yeah. And but it wasn't always easy for her to find a job. She finally went to work, I think, for the on the Oakland Army base, I think it was. But no, and I'm very proud of her. She recently retired. She's 97, and she retired 2 years ago from the florist business. Yeah,
Wow.
and all of us graduated from grammar school, Sonoma Grammar School.
Amazing, the whole thing.
And we also from Sonoma High School, except for George. George Dalcini, my oldest brother. He quit high school when he was 16, like I said, to take care of all of us.
Right.
And I didn't know this until I turned 16. And I was listening to the things to my mother that I would like. And she said, no, she says, you know, the nicest present all of us ever received was one George gave us when he turned 16. He came home and told my mother, no, he says, I'm going to help you and Papa. And so he quit high school. And I believe the high school, the original high school, is behind that little old building behind the Ford, used to be Whitehead's, Ford's Whitehead.
Yes.
And isn't that the original? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one my brother George went to.
So how long altogether were you in camp?
I was in with my brother Alvin, fortunately for, it wasn't more than six to 8 weeks. It was something in that, because my mother immediately came to Mr. Presley. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you remember about living there, where you were?
In the camp?
Yeah, how you lived there, where you were.
Like I said, it was shocked to walk in and see so many Japanese, but my sister said, come on, we're going to go to the mess hall. And I said, mess hall. And she said, yeah, and she said, that's where we eat. And I said, oh, okay, but everyone was rushing around, so it was so busy. And I asked my sister, why is everybody rushing? Well, there had been a fire the night before in the mess hall, and they used those extinguishers, and some of the chemicals got on the food, and it gave the people diarrhea. And I said, I don't know if I want to eat here. She said, well, you're not going to find many places to eat, I hate to tell you. But my brothers and I stayed in this one room. It was like barracks. And it had hooks, I remember hooks where we hung our clothes on, and a large bed and a single bed. And my brother Alvin at that time didn't go to camp with my brother and I because he had bronchial pneumonia and he was in the Sonoma County Hospital at that time. But they told my mother, we're sorry, anyone of Japanese ancestry has to go. So they put him on a bus and he came to camp. I guess it was about the end of the week from when I entered. And he had this horrible cough. And when I saw my brother coming across, I think there's a Marine Reserve station still there, but the bus stopped there, then we walked across. I thought, who is that? I was, oh God, it's Alvin. He'd lost so much weight. He was so sick. So we took him to the barracks, and we gave him the single bed. And oh gosh, he coughed so bad. Finally, I said, Alvin, stop coughing. And he says, I can't help it. And I says, well, go home then. And he says, I can't. And I apologized to my brother not too long ago because he felt so guilty saying that to him when I knew he couldn't go anywhere. He was so sick. But he got well eventually. My mother brought down, she was allowed to bring some party pack orange, and I don't know where she got this recipe from, but she said if you drank the party pack orange and took 2 aspirin and you weren't feeling good, that was it. And he got well, but I don't think it was, I don't know, maybe it was. But yeah, and then my sister's barracks was, we were almost across camp, so I found I could find my way to go. And then one day these Japanese ladies came along and they were speaking Japanese to me, and I couldn't respond. I had no idea what they're saying. So finally one said to the other, she's not going to talk to us. That's the professor's daughter. And I thought, no, I'm Puppa's daughter. I didn't call my father professor or anything. So I told my sister when I got to her barracks, I said, gee, Liz, and I told her what they said, and she said, oh, she said, well, just whenever you run into something like that, just find another way. And I basically use that philosophy a lot. Just find another way. And I also tell the children that we speak to that the strongest prejudices you can feel are sometimes right within your own race. And it's amazing how many children bob their heads up and down. We usually speak to juniors, we've spoken to juniors and seniors. And I know when my sister's barracks, I couldn't believe it. The petition didn't go, well, in fact, the petitions were blankets on ropes. And then you could hear what the other person way down was saying. It was just, it didn't go to, the petition didn't go to the top. But, and her whole family, it was quite a few, Johnny came from a big family, but they all stayed together. And we'd go to eat together. And I remember one time, it was right after I got there, I picked up this tray and I didn't know what to do with the silverware. This is after I had finished eating. And I didn't know what to do with the silverware. And this lady came up to me and she said, what's the matter with you? Put them over there. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to eat at her table. But it was because I was half and half. Some of them felt they knew who I was, and my sister was. And other than that, we had entertainment. In the course, we sit out in the grandstand. Sunday night was talent night. And I don't know if you remember Jack Sue off of Barney Miller? He was in camp. He's not Chinese. He's got a Chinese name, but he's Japanese. He couldn't get work with his Japanese name, so he just added Sue to it. And he would sing, and he was great. And then I remember the men used to, the young ones, they had competitions knitting argot socks. And some of them, boy, they were good, you know. And I liked the nights they signed my brother kind of like a block warden to check on everybody. Friday night and Saturday night, they could have dances, and I think in the mess halls. And I liked it when he went because he'd bring me home cookies. And then, of course, my mom came with the good news that we were going to be coming home. And I go down now to Tan Fran, it's a shopping center.
Yes.
And one day when we were talking to this one class at San Mateo, they said, do you remember where your building was that you stayed in when you go through the shopping center? And I said, I'm not sure, maybe it's under Penny. they laughed, and I couldn't figure out what was, so I guess it did sound strange to it.
Did you go to school while you were in the camp? Was there
I wrote
school?
to Miss Cooper. In fact, I tried to find her a letter. I wrote, my mother took my letter to her, brought it to her. And I asked for some books that if I could keep up with the class. And she wrote a letter. In her letter, she said, I'm sorry that she didn't have letters, books and this and that, yet she did get them to me. So I think when I was reading that letter, in fact, this was just recently that I took out that letter, and I thought she did it to protect herself. But she did get the books to me. And she was always very inviting lady in my eyes. Yeah. And they did have school classes, but in some of the camps, and in many of them, it was just seats going around. It wasn't like a regular classroom. And I asked one time, we were at a camp reunion. They have camp reunions every now and then. My husband's was the largest camp. And they had seat, like benches or little chairs going around in that bigger classes. Yeah. And I was going to say about, someone asked, how did the hospital get started in the camps? Well, at my husband's in Comanche, Colorado, someone got sick, and they happened to have an empty room, a barracks room. One of the doctors volunteered, and then one of the nurses volunteered, and then that's how it got started. They realized that they needed an infirmary at least. And in fact, Comanche, Colorado right now, my husband's camp, that was just like Sonoma Grammar School was put up as the grammar school of the nation, I believe. Well, Comanche was the model camp, and they had just about everything there except, being freedom.
Yes.
They didn't have that, but the high school there is wonderful. The high school keeps everything going, and if anyone goes back, or groups go back on tours or visits, the high school, the children make lunches for all the tourists that are the Japanese that come back. So that bondage runs strong yet in the Japanese community, yeah. But being back home, being with, coming home, seeing Mark and everybody, means a lot. There's nothing like friends from home.
You stayed here through high school. You lived in Sonoma.
High school, I lived right next to the high school. The produce farm was there. And in fact, my brothers cut a fence. It was we used to call it the old cow fence, but they cut it so I could unlatch it instead of having to walk out on the street, cut through. He said, my brother George used to say, that's so long, that means you can work in the garden longer. See, you got a shorter distance to school. But no, I really truly loved high school too. Yeah.
What did you do after you graduated from high school?
I got married.
You did?
Yeah. I graduated in June, and then married my husband Frank. His mother was my Japanese Sunday school teacher in 1937, and my father wanted us to learn Japanese because someday maybe we would meet his family in Japan. And he came to America, I think he got here in 1905. He was 17 when he got here, he turned 17. And then he was so fortunate to get a job working for Jack London. He worked for Jack London for many years, yeah. And Jack London wrote a very lovely character reference for my father when he left him in August of 1913. And then he went to work, opened a garage in San Francisco. It surprises me, and I didn't know my father knew anything about cars. But my uncle and he opened it, and then in 1927, my father went into his martial arts. That was his dream, to come here. He was only 5'3", and my mother was 5'9". So even in the wedding picture, the photographer said, "You, lady, you sit down and you let your husband stand up." I have the picture here. But yeah, it's...
Do you speak Japanese now?
No, I don't, and you know, they always say there's a reason for something, right? Well, my father wanted us to so bad. He brought home, I'll never forget, you know the old Victrolas that you put the record on and then you lift the head over and then you wind it on the side. It's low, medium, fast, the little dial. Well, he came in home with this record. It was beautiful. Mercury, it was bright red, and he said, "I want you to listen to it, you and Alvin, and then pretty soon you speak Japanese." And I said, "Oh, okay." So we said, I must have been 5 or 6. And so we put it on, and it was "Konnichiwa, hello, sayonara, goodbye." Well, you know, we got, that's kind of stupid, but okay. So my father put it on. He said, "I come back." Well, and we thought he went all the way down into the living room. So my brother said, "You want to hear something?" And I said, "What?" He put it on fast. He goes, "Konnichiwa, goodbye." I said, "Oh, it was all mixed." And we were laughing, and I looked, I saw my father shoot. He did his typical, I swear, we used to wish that he would give us a spanking or do something, but no, we got an hour lecture. How disrespectful it was. And I will never forget, the look on his face when I looked up. He kind of wasn't smiling, but he expected it of us. That's why he came back. But, and then of course my brother was great help. Well, Ginger did it. She wanted it on fast. But no, we didn't, of course there was no one left to speak Japanese with them. Everyone was the Yamakawas, I think. They went to Arizona or...
Fresno and then Arizona.
Yeah, yeah.
And then came back to Fresno before they came back here.
Oh, they did go back to
Or
Fresno.
Livermore, one of the two.
Yeah, a lot of Japanese came back. Some of them were sent back as feelers. Frank's father was asked to go to Sebastopol and feel their way, see how it is. And then he went back and got his family, Frank's dad. And I'll never forget, Mother Masuoka said when they got off the bus at Santa Rosa, they sat them in the restaurant right next door, but right in the window. And of course, everybody was staring at them, and they couldn't eat. And so, they were welcome back as well. When I came home, let's see, I came to school on Monday, and then Monday afternoon, my mother asked me to ride the bike to Simmons Drugstore to get some things for her. And as I came out, these two ladies were talking, and I was just getting on my bike, and the one said to the other, "Oh my God, the Japs are back." And I thought, I gotta get home and tell Mama. And I got all the way to high school when I thought, wait a minute, that hasn't been talking about me. So I went in and I told my mother what the lady said, and she said, well, she was half right, and we were only half Jap. And she didn't bother Mama, so it didn't bother me. Yeah. But she said, she told me, she said, you're gonna hear some things like that, but when it comes to children, I guess it was 6th grade, this boy came up to me and said, you know, Virginia, your family started the war. I said, really? So I was kind of upset. I went home and I told my mother, and I said, Mama, I said, so-and-so said, we started the war. And she said, well, you just ask him, because his father had a good, easy job. Just ask him what his father is doing, and then tell him that your father is training the military with his expertise to protect this country. So, and she said, you know, when you look him in the eye. And I've never ever had any problem with him after that. I did tell him that. And this other boy, he came up and he said, you know, Mats, you're a Jap, and you're always going to be a Jap. So I went home and told my mother, and she said, you know, you're not too smart for me. I said, why? She said, you should have told them you're not a Jap, you're a half Jap. So, and this day I went to school, I egged him on until he called me a Jap. And he looked at me like, he said, you're crazy, Mom. And he walked away, and we grew up to be the best of friends. Yeah. So, I'm very thankful to be from Sonoma and have, you know, all the friends that I had, even here. Who thinks I was going to overlook Sonoma? But no, Miss Cooper was wonderful. She was, to me, if every teacher was like Miss Cooper, and Mrs. Grinstead, of course, in high school. But no, I really thought the world of all my teachers. And they put up with me for 8 years.
Put up with both of us.
Anna, my sister, my mother was busy working in the garden the first day I started school. I didn't go to kindergarten, did you?
Oh, Mrs. Woodworth had kindergarten over by George D. Martini's house.
Oh, I didn't, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't, no, I started 1st grade.
Right.
So my sister Anna, my mother said, Anna, you take Jenny to school. So she brought me up here. I've never seen so many people in all my life. So Anna started walking home. I followed her halfway home. She didn't know I was behind her. And she said, you get back to school. And I'd never seen my sister raise her voice at me before. I know, I better get back to school. So it wasn't too bad. It took me a little while to get used to it. Because you guys all knew each other.
Yeah, well, you were from out of town.
Yeah, I was a hick. I was out in the country. But,
Right next to the high school.
right next to the high school.
Do you have any photos of?
I brought some things with me. I'll get the.
The kids gone?
Yeah. I wrote this letter to Dolores.
These are her brothers here.
These are your brothers right here. Okay.
Oh,
And
then, of
this,
course,
this is something.
this is Alice.
Anna.
This is, I was in the 5th grade.
Oh,
And this is a letter that we had, Miss Cooper said for us to write a letter to Santa Claus. And this is the one that
Oh,
Do you want to read that?
And so.
Yeah, I think, this one, okay, it says, Dear Santa
I don't want you to
Claus.
drop anything out of there.
This was written, December 15th, 1941. I have been trying to be good so that you will come to my house on the night before Christmas. My mother said that I have been a good girl so far. My mother asked me what I want for you to bring me on Christmas. I told her that I wanted you to bring me a wristwatch and a pair of shoe skates. That's all I want for Christmas.
Yeah, it's her.
My mother said that she would clean out the chimney
Yeah.
just for you, nobody else. Our dog bites, so I decided to tie it up on a post. We will leave our back door open for you. Yours truly, Virginia Matsuyama. I found it was all tattered and everything, but I thought I'd bring that.
That's great.
And this was an article that first thing I saw in the newspaper that caught my 10-year-old eye, and it was from a lady in I think around let's see Tanfran, San Bruno, I think it was from. And let me see, maybe I can read better with that. This was to the Chronicle. I disagree with Mr. Henry Stauffer in regard for the Japanese becoming citizens of the United States. In the first place, they are inferior as a race. No matter how many times they marry into the white race, the men have those little short arms. And I thought, I don't remember Papa having short arms. I gotta check him out when he comes home. And Mr. Stauffer says he knows a Japanese who has 11 children. That is the principal trouble. They multiply rapidly and spread out all over the world. In time, they would outnumber us and control the vote. In regards to those children being well educated, why don't they go back to Japan and teach their people how to live? Show them the benefits of our form of government. Our government has many faults, but with all its faults, it is far superior to theirs. If all the people followed the 10 Commandments, there would be no war. And I was, I'd come home from Sunday school, and I cut that out, and I remember taking it to my mom and saying, yeah, but if she believes in the 10 Commandments, she wouldn't be so, prejudiced. And my mother says, oh, you got him. That's all she'd say. Yeah. And, but I had a little hard time. I folded that and kept that and put it away for many years, and then I came across that. But this is a collector's item. That was taken right out here, I believe.
Yeah. Now, who's that?
Who are
Is that Pete?
Pete Smith, Johnny Mazza, and
Okay.
Bill Johnson.
Yeah.
And isn't that Mrs. Sousa's house right next door?
Yeah, Mrs. Susan's, yeah.
And then Donald Ramachati lived with them, huh? Yeah.
Such a, so is your dad.
Yeah, and then he had the house up across the street from Vallejo, too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Donald lived up there.
On this one here,
But you know why? She talks about
this
it,
read where,
so she keeps it fresh in her mind.
you know how they have Remember When in the Sonoma paper? And it said the permit given to members of the Matsuyama family to be exempt from evacuation on account of their mother being an American was suddenly canceled, and more of the family left here with Sonoma County Japanese evacuated over the last weekend. Two children of grammar school age were included in the evacuation order, and also the son, George Matsuyama, junior college student, 22, who was trying to enlist in the service where two brothers are in training. The father of the family, Professor Frank Matsuyama, is in Denver, having left the coast and resumed his police work with the Denver officers. He taught the art of self-defense and wrestling to Berkeley police and was considered an expert at Yawara and Jiu-Jitsu. Yawara was the art of self-defense used by samurai. Yeah. And his father was grandfather. But these pictures here, you can go through them. Playing tag football out in the backyard. And my mother came running out and she said, Louis, my brother Louis was already in the Army at Camp Roberts. She said, you've got to go back to camp right away because Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor. And we were all wondering, what's Mama talking about? And then my father, though, I looked up right at that time when he heard, and he said, came and he put his arm around me, and in the picture you can see he's got his arm around me. But he said at the time, this is bad. He says it's so sad. And so my brother had to, my mother said, I want a family picture because, we don't know when we're going to be together again. So I want everyone to get dressed up. Oh, Mom, we don't want to. We're going to finish the game first, and then Louis is going to go. So she was not happy. You can see in the picture. She's not happy. But we were fortunate in at least having that. And then this was at the last family group reunion that we had at our Sonoma Grammar School.
What year was that?
Oh, let me see. This is at least maybe 12, 14 years ago. About 14 years ago. Yeah. And George, he was Italian. And this brother was always taken for Indian. And he was taken for just anything, and Filipino, and Greek. But they always said the girls were Japanese. Yeah. So we were fortunate, and of course then that's group picture of my children.
And these are your children?
Yeah. But it's when you go back. I'm trying to do some history on my father, but as Carlos can tell you, my house is a mess because I got things, and then you find something else. This doesn't belong there. This should be over there, and this and that, and then you find more historical things. So I admire anyone that does autobiography. Hawaii, and then this is the Nisei from that trained at Camp Shelby. This is the outfit my brother Louis was with, but didn't get sent out with. And it's really
Act of Congress.
Wow. This was November 2nd of 11. And my sweetie pie got that.
Pretty
You
impressive.
have the real gold one from the museum at the Young Museum in San Francisco in June.
No.
It will be displayed there by the
That
month.
one is solid gold and will remain at the Smithsonian.
You mean this isn't?
No, he said he's going to take this. He's going to take this, and while no one's looking,
There's going to be a little switch.
This is a good replica.
It's beautiful.
he said
It's
to me,
beautifully
he
done.
said to me that they had a big dinner. It was beautiful.
He's not wearing a small one, Ginger?
No, he should have worn the small one. No, they awarded him a pendant. But he said before dinner, he says, sweet, if it's, gee, that's nice for getting at, because I can wear it for functions, you know, I can just put a ribbon through it and wear it. So he came back and said, forget it. I'll be stooped over.
Bending to the floor.
Yeah. But this was so nice getting together with you. I didn't anticipate.
Enjoyed it so
But
much.
all the rooms, sometime I'm gonna come through if I can and go through all the rooms.
Well, I
because,
would love to give you a tour. We're just
Okay.
finishing Andrews Hall. It's completely
oh, do we get a
upgraded.
peek at it?
Absolutely.
Oh,